Hey friend, it's Patricia here. We are about to get started with today's episode, but first, if you want to land a position that is a perfect fit at a great company, making good money, even if you don't have a fancy title or a big network or a ton of experience, then head over into the description and grab the Career Transition Checklist. This is basically a checklist that includes all 7 phases of a successful career search, many of which people miss altogether all the time. So grab that in the description. Know that I'm cheering you on all the way through. And now let's get into today's episode. Hey friend, let's talk about your amazing God-given brand and the mindset you need to stand out in a crowded job market. Whether you want to launch, pivot, or move up in your career, we're going to tackle this together. Meet up with me each week to help you get confident, get noticed, and get hired. I'm Patricia Ortega, and this is the Uncommon Career Podcast. Hey friends, welcome back. Today I'm talking to Erin Harrigan. Erin's a Christian, a wife, an empty nester mom, a speaker, and author, a business coach, but she also has 30 years of experience in the corporate world, in sales and project management. She's got 10 years of experience in network marketing. She really has just a wide perspective to be able to talk to us about career pivots, about, recognizing when you're no longer fulfilled at work, or what are those red flags. So we talk about these things in detail today. We also talk about how to make a career pivot. What are some steps that you have to take before you actually go onto those online job boards? Because if you're going to make a career pivot, and especially if you're going to make a career pivot, even if you're not, but especially if you are, you want to take some steps before even hopping to look at job boards. And this is to help you get into the right mindset, figure out what you really want, where you want to go, and how your skills can apply there. We talk about a whole lot of things related to getting into corporate and making some career changes. But we also talk about other types of careers, such as small business, online business, etc. She's really a wealth of information. So stay tuned. It's going to be a fantastic episode. And if you're a believer, if you're a Christian of the faith, know that towards the end of the episode, we've also got some really good insights as far as letting God be sort of the leader and the one who provides the direction for your career. It's an awesome episode. Let's get into it. Hey, Erin, it's so good to have you on the episode. How are you?
I am great. It is an honor to be here with you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. I had to share your story and just hear all of the insights that you have. So first, start us off by telling us a little bit about your career story and your background.
Yeah, for sure. So it's important, I think, for people to know that. So I grew up with a single mom, and working hard was always the work ethic that we were raised in. So I started working probably around 14, at this sort of Orange Julius place in the mall, and worked all, of course, through high school, and knew that to change the trajectory of my life from the poverty and the challenge that we had grown up in, that I needed to go to school and get a degree and get a job and get on that corporate fast track as quickly as I could. So I got my degree in sociology. So what the heck do you do with that, right? And my first job out of college was a sales job. And I love people, and I think I'm pretty good with them. Sales is not the direction that I thought I would go, but that started this sort of trajectory of sales work as well as project management work. And very shortly after that, I landed a job with a communications company, and I was doing project management. My title then was account manager, and I loved it. I loved getting the team in the room, having them talk about the work they were going to be doing with clients, and me literally standing at the whiteboard, mapping out the timeline. And loved that so much. But financially, sales, of course, was more lucrative. So spent a few years doing that, moved over to a publishing company, a medical publishing company, where I was in sales and my clients were in the pharmaceutical industry, and stayed at that company for about 7 years, went through a few different iterations, moved from sales into sales management, and had a sales team under me, which again, I absolutely loved, because sometimes, I don't know about you, Patricia, but we do things that we know we're good at, but we don't necessarily love them, but they come very naturally. Sales kind of wore me out, but I was really good at it. So after I spent 7 years at the publishing company, our company went through a transition, and my boss left, and I was asked to re-interview for the role that I had.
Oh my
And
gosh.
that was, if you work in healthcare or particularly in the pharmaceutical world, it's very common for there to be layoffs, changes, et cetera. So even though we were a company that provided services to that industry, we went through this massive change. And it was right around that time, 2007, 2008. So I had been in the workforce for about 20 years by that point. A little less than 20, somewhere around there. And my boss who left went to a new company, and he was like, listen, I know you really love being in management and having a sales team, but I need you to come do sales for me again at this company. And I trusted him completely. So I made that shift. The funny thing is, I remember he said to me before I went to interview, listen, just stay for a year. If you don't love it, you can find something else. But I kind of didn't absorb that, which I wish I had, because a year into that job, he was gone. Other things were changing. So I spent about 4 years at that company. So that kind of brings me up to 2012. And so at that point, I had about 25 years or so in corporate America. And I was ready to do something different. I was ready to start my own thing and kind of get off of that path. So I know that's sort of a different story, but what I loved about being in corporate, even though sometimes we think it's stable, but it's not, because, companies can change hands, companies can be acquired, all of the things, is that there were great benefits to it. It was really steady. And I had a pretty good career kind of navigating that ladder up, which, looking back to my childhood, is exactly what I wanted to do.
Wow. Okay. So the summary, right, is had a major in sociology
and get a job.
What are you supposed to do with the major in sociology? And I get that all the time, right? I don't have a major in that.
Yeah.
But there's so many areas that
For sure.
any degree can help to fulfill.
Yeah.
What was your experience kind of starting out, right? And then going into sales and then realizing project management is actually right. And the management piece was something that you really enjoyed. What is that like to kind of feel like, oh, pivot?
Yeah. I feel like I had a lot of pivots, but at the same time, much of my career was spent in the same service industry, if you will, because I started working with companies in the healthcare and pharmaceutical space probably in 1994, and stayed in a proximity to that space, if you will, always on the service side. So always providing services to the broader industry. And I stayed in that industry until 2012. So obviously it was a long time, but there were those pivots. For me, coming out of school with a degree like sociology, most people, I don't know if I can say most people, but most of my friends were going to law school, or they were going to work for a research company or one of the big think tanks in DC. And none of that really appealed to me. I mean, law school, I thought about for about a minute and thought, like, I just killed myself to get through college finances. How am I, like, I got my bachelor's degree. How am I going to go get a law degree? Yeah. And when you're in that situation, you really have to step back. And there's a great book that I read. There was a book out at the time called What Color is Your Parachute? It was like a big one in the 80s, right? But there was another book that I read, which was called Do What You Love. And it kind of takes the Myers-Briggs, and it not only shows you like what kind of roles would be good for you based on your Myers-Briggs, but it also asks a whole bunch of questions around, like, what do you do very naturally? Like, what could you do all day? Kind of those kinds of questions, not exactly in that verbiage. And so I was able to take all of the things that I had learned through being a sociology major, but then all of the things that always came naturally to me, and then applied them where they were. And so I think the lesson in that is your skills are transferable. It's just how you package it, right? How you talk about it. Each of those pivots came at moments where companies were changing. And so my company was changing and they were like, okay, well, we don't need you in this role, but could you do this? Well, of course I can do that, right? Like, absolutely. I also had the unique opportunity in a couple of places to sort of create the position that I was in because I was shifting out of one thing into another. And I think that all comes down to knowing what you're really good at and being flexible enough to step back and see, okay, so then how do I piece this puzzle together?
Oh, absolutely. And, I just talked to someone I think it was day before yesterday, and, there's a lot of career pivots in her career as well. And it was very much this conversation around the fact that there's only a finite number of skills. They're just expressed in different ways, right?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
And just knowing and being confident in, I have this skill, I can express it differently to fit this context.
That is such a great way to put it. I think when I was leaving corporate, there was, I don't know if it was a study, it may have been in Harvard Business Review, I don't know, where it said that this generation after Gen X would change jobs 7 to 12 times in their lifetime. And the generation before us, so the baby boomers, like I think about my parents or my husband's parents, like they stayed in jobs for 30, 40 years. And I think that has shifted a lot.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't think that's the case anymore. I actually worked with a guy, he was really good in sales. And it seemed like he switched companies like every 3 years. Like every time I saw him on LinkedIn, I was like, dude, what are you doing now? Right. But it's exactly what you said. Like, I have these skills. How do I express them in this way? And some skills are so universal and we just don't always think about it that way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I always tell folks, you've got the skill sets. This is what you can do, but you've attached it to the knowledge base in your current industry, right?
Yeah.
But what if you gave yourself the grace to say, it's going to take me 6 months, a year, however, to learn this new knowledge base, but the skills are already there. Yeah. You're just kind of pulling, the knowledge piece out of it.
Yeah.
This is a great conversation, but I'm going to take it in a slightly different direction because you've got so much great insight. And I definitely want to ask you, what led you out of corporate?
What led me out of corporate was the desire to have quality time with my family. So I was never, and no offense to the stay-at-home moms listening or who used to be whatever, that was not me. Like I knew I was going back to work after each of my kids. I have 2 kids, but what was key for me probably around 2010 was I was traveling about 70% of the time. I was making an incredible salary. I was the primary breadwinner. I was getting bonuses, etc. I was hitting my numbers because I was in a sales role at the time. But I just was so tired. I was tired of getting on the train to go to New Jersey every other week for a few days. I was tired of getting on the plane. I mean, I really was a road warrior. And at first, that was sort of glamorous to me. Like, ooh, look at me. I'm in another airport or I'm on the train again, whatever. But around 2010, I just was so tired. There was a little bit of toxic environment going on in the organization that I was with. It was very patriarchal. So there were only 2 women on the sales team. And so there was some, things going on around that. But I mostly was just feeling like, how do I make a shift that gives me more time with my family? Because it's great that I make the money, but I don't see them. I was getting up at 3 to leave by 4 a.m. My husband was taking my then 10-year-old and dropping her off at a friend's house at 5 o'clock in the morning so that she could get her to school, leaving our then 13-year-old home alone until she got on the bus at 7:30 in the morning. And this just was not sustainable. So that's what drove me to look for opportunities. It's where I found my first foray, if you will, into an entrepreneur business with a multi-level marketing company. And I did that for 2 years alongside of my job because that's just what I needed to do until, as I was planning my exit strategy, my corporate entity decided, yeah, we don't need you. And we know that you're going to make your goal, but we don't want to have to pay you that bonus. So we're going to let you go now before the end of the year. So my exit plan was preempted by,
Oh no.
yeah. So that's really what led me to look at owning my own business.
Wow. So there's this point where you realize maybe this isn't what I want.
Right.
Right. And folks can find that and then either make a career pivot into a different field, or they can go into their own business. Like there's freelance, there's so many different ways to kind of build out a career.
Yeah.
Was there a moment? I feel like sometimes we go our whole lives and 5-10 years after the actual moment when something happened is when the light bulb goes off of, oh, I don't like my life right now. I don't like what's happened over time. Was there a moment or some signs that folks listening can watch out for and be like, oh, wait, maybe I'm not going the way I want?
Sure. Definitely. So I started with that company in 2008. There were a number of inflection points. The first inflection point was when my boss left, because he's the one that brought me there. And so when he decided to move on, that was a red flag, because I thought, oh, remember when he said, like, I only had to do this for a year, right? So when he was leaving, I should have taken that and run with it. In fact, I remember exactly where I was sitting when I got the news that he had left. And I was like, wait, well, hold on, right? So there was that. Some other things that were going on in the company were just the way the different people on the sales team, and this can happen in any team, were being treated. So some were just being treated a little bit differently than others. Some were given, more leeway, while for some of us, it was a little more stringent, sort of, well, you need to follow these rules, but yet not everybody was following those rules, if you will. There was a lot of, we were highly paid, highly compensated salespeople. And yet there was a lot of micromanaging happening, which at that level, the bottom line in sales should have been like, you're either making your number or you're not. But there was a lot of micromanagement. And that was sort of disturbing for me. And then in our company, there were two different offices. We were an office in New Jersey, but our headquarters was in North Carolina. And the leadership of the two offices were constantly head to head. So that doesn't always bode well either. I mean, even though I was sitting in an office that was producing what needed to be produced, because of that head to head between the leadership, it meant that there was sort of this air of animosity and internal competition that made it really, really uncomfortable. So that was another sign. And then I would say the last sign, and this probably happened about 4 months or so before they let me go. I had planned a family vacation. I actually had earned the trip through my side hustle. And they were aware of my side hustle because I had gone to HR and I had in writing that it was okay that I could do this, which, by the way, if you have a side hustle, just make sure you're following all of those rules internally. And I was leaving for vacation. And the day before, my VP, we were working on a deal. And I said, so I'm going to be going on vacation tomorrow. So I'm going to need you to step in on this. I don't think it's going to close while I'm gone, but could you just sort of shepherd it through while I'm gone for the week? And he was like, it's not my client. It's your client. And I said, well, yes, but I'm going to be away out of the country. And he said, that's not my problem. And that should have been like right there. And I think it was that moment where I thought, I think I gotta, now it's time. Like, this has gone 2 years beyond where it should have gone. It's really, I should have left 2 years ago. And there just was a lot of compromise that they wanted you to make on the family side, to give all your loyalties to the company. So I think any of those kinds of red flags are things for people to be aware of.
Gosh, all of those points are points that I know someone is listening and they're like, I just thought this was normal.
Yes.
I think we go through life and I know there's someone listening. I know you're listening right now and you're thinking, I was hired at XYZ salary. So-and-so quit. I'm now doing two people's jobs for the same salary. And when I ask for a raise, I'm giving a cost of living raise, which really does not amount to the true inflation rate, right?
No.
And it's like all these things, it's kind of like you're boiling the frog.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Yes.
Way, right? Of how did I get here? And so I just encourage you, if you're listening, to have that moment to just stop and be like, let me wake up for a second. Do I like what I'm doing every day? Do I like how you said, Erin, how I'm being treated? Do I like the environment that I'm in? Is this bringing out the best of me? Is this helping me grow and challenging me in a good way? Or is this actually holding me back from who I'm meant to be, what I am meant to do, you know, everything that I can share with the work world, the marketplace, right?
Yeah. So good.
You share such great insight. And I know someone's out there who's like, let me think about this now, right?
Right. And if I could just add something to that, because one of the things that I see side hustle opportunities do, like multi-level marketing, which I believe in that. I think that's a wonderful business distribution system, right? What I see many people in those industries do is they demonize the corporate environment. And so I just want to say to the listeners, if corporate is your thing, awesome. Like, don't listen to the voices that are like, oh, they have you in the golden handcuffs and you're not safe and blah, all of these things. Is that true sometimes? Yeah, it is. But like, for example, my daughter works for the local school system. She loves it because stability is important to her. 9 to 5 is important to her. So if that's you, that is okay. And if you know that you're in an environment that is really taking the life out of you, that's sort of hamstringing you, that you're really not operating in the way that you know you can best, then absolutely think about, how do I begin to pivot that? I think anyone in a job generally would say, like, don't leave a job until you have another job, right? I mean, be smart about it.
Yeah.
But be aware, you know, even journaling on that, even just sort of keeping track of what you're experiencing and how you're feeling. I mean, obviously, if it's an incredibly toxic and dangerous environment, get out. But there's nothing wrong with being in corporate if that's where you want to be. Just know that.
Oh, that's so good. It's good to point that out, right? Because in every organization, there is the good and the bad and the ugly, right? And this brings us like right into my next question, you know, which is the fact that like you come into the scary moment where you're let go, or when you realize I've landed somewhere I did not intend, right? And there's these different types of organizations. A nonprofit, it's going to be very flexible, maybe sometimes not paid as well as corporate, of course. Like there's going to be these different facets, right? You've got your government and educational organizations, which have very much that 9 to 5, and then you've got corporate, right? So you have these different environments for professionals based on your corporate experience who are coming from education, from nonprofit, from businesses, whether they got laid off or they just want to make that pivot. What is your advice to hop from one of those into corporate?
Number one, get really clear on the skills, the talents, and the gifts that you bring. What I see sometimes happen is someone wants to make that shift, but they think, well, I don't have that skill set, or I don't have that experience. Take a real inventory of what you bring to the table, because those skills are transferable, right? It's just like we talked about earlier. It's like, how will you express them differently, and how do you package them differently on your resume, et cetera. Number two, don't be afraid to apply for the job, even if you only have half of the experience. You know, I know there's a study out there that says that men will apply for a job even if they only have one of the qualifications, but women won't apply for the job unless they have 100%. But there is a uniqueness to you that you bring to the table to any organization. So leverage that. Yeah. It takes a certain kind of demeanor and personality to work in an educational environment. Well, how does that really do an inventory? How does that translate? And what does that bring to the table that maybe they don't have? And it's up to you to point that out to them. Mm-hmm. So number one, I would do that inventory. Number two, I would think about, how do you package what experience you have? Mm-hmm. And then number three, I would sit long and hard and think about, like, what would you really love to be doing? I was a sociology major at the time. I couldn't, back then when we used newspapers, you didn't open the newspaper and search for a job that said sociology, right? It wasn't accounting. It wasn't engineering, right? So sometimes the role that you may be looking for doesn't have a title that you would expect. I mean, titles are very different in today's corporate world. But what are the core tasks, the core mission of the role and the organization that you want to work with, and start to, spend some time thinking about that too. Mm-hmm. And then start to do, you're looking for what's next, because it is entirely possible. Just like people come from corporate into education, nonprofit, guess what? People go the opposite way too. And you can do it. Just be aware of what you're bringing to the table.
Gosh, you literally laid out the plan so beautifully. And what you covered were the pieces that nobody really thinks about. Most people say, I need a new job. Yeah. Let's hop on the first thing you do. Let's go to Indeed.
Yes.
I'm like, there is so much to do before you head over into any job search.
So much.
And also don't spend your time on the job search boards, but
right.
But there's this entire process, right, of kind of opening up your mind. It's a mindset exercise to say,
yes.
The world is bigger than I think it is. So let's start by opening up our mind, not just about the skill sets we have and how we can use and express them, but also about the world of possibilities that are out there, and so many job titles that are being created right now.
Absolutely.
That they're not even on job search sites like Own It Online or BLS.gov or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's that process. You also talked about the process of taking an inventory about what you liked and didn't like, to be crystal clear on that. And then you also talked about, the idea that you have a personality. So beyond your skill sets, you have a way of being that can lend itself to be an asset in a new environment.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. I love that. I mean, you just prepared people for a career change right now in 10 minutes.
There was one more thing that I wanted to just tack on to that around being prepared. I made a move so after I left corporate, I did my network marketing business for 4 years and I still have it, but around the 4 or 5 year mark, I ended up going into consulting. And the reason that I did that is because my network marketing business, while I had great success, had not fully replaced my income. And we were just in a financial squeeze. So I started looking for jobs. I ended up getting a call from a friend of mine who said, hey, I know this company. They're looking for somebody who could do sales and project management. You're amazing. And I ended up consulting, and I still consult with that company 7 years later. I do a few projects. It's very project based. Mm-hmm. But in 2020, I decided that I wanted to have more stability in my income. I was still coaching, and my coaching was rolling along, my entrepreneurial coaching business. The consulting gig had slowed a little bit. So I thought, well, I'm going to go get this full-time job with this local organization that works with small businesses. And I thought it was a great move. Now, first of all, please know there are no failures. It's just learning, right? Mm-hmm. And I do believe there's a reason that God took me there. However, my advice from that is, once I got into it, I was like, wow, like, yes, I have knowledge that I can share, but this is not the right environment. Like, they were wonderful people, mm-hmm. but some of the things were a little bit antiquated, et cetera. So don't be afraid to rethink a decision, because 8 months later, I decided after much prayer, please hear me, God was like, nope, it's time to move onto something, onto this. Don't be afraid to reevaluate, and also don't jump 2 feet too quickly. Like really evaluate what's in front of you. I get that some of you may be thinking, no, you don't understand. I need a job tomorrow that pays me this because I got to get out of here. If you can give yourself just a little bit of space so that you don't make that jump too quickly and jump into the wrong thing. But if you do jump into something and you give it however long, don't hold yourself to some self-imposed timeline. It doesn't have to be, I have to stay here a year. I mean, if you're contractually obligated, yes. Yeah. But just know that it doesn't have to be forever. Yeah.
That's good. That's good, because we feel, and this happens on the front end of getting a job, you know? Yeah. I went for the interview. I can't tell them no if they offer me the job, right?
Right.
As well as like the other end. But at the end of the day, you know, someone told me, what did they say? Oh gosh, I'm not going to remember it right now. Basically, in other terms, you are just as replaceable as the next person.
That's right.
Right. And so in the same way that the company will replace you, you have to take care of yourself. The company will take care of itself. You've got to do that too. And you can leave a position, even if it has to be abruptly, like you can leave a position and stay in the relationships with the people.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that we sometimes overlook that fact. I mean, it's a hard, cold fact, what you just said, Patricia, like you are replaceable, right? Yeah. Well, guess what? You have that option also. Now, do you do that with as much grace and professionalism? Yes. Of course. But know that they'll be okay. If it is not the right fit for you, they'll be okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. Such a great point. Yeah. Okay. Now we know that there's folks that are going into corporate or into education, into nonprofit work, but we also know that career is opening up to mean a lot of different things, right? Yeah. There's the freelance, there's the entrepreneurship and stuff. And so you've opened up a whole world outside of work. So let's talk about that option. Tell us what you're doing right now, how you made the transition out. All that good stuff.
So in 2014, so I was let go from my job in 2012. I kicked it into high gear in my multi-level marketing business. And I would say that outward success, right? I had the numbers, I had the stage moments, I had the car, like all the things, but I was inwardly really suffering, frantic, chaos, all the things. So in 2014, so 2 years after losing my job, I looked myself in the mirror one day and I was like, this is not what I thought this was going to feel like. And so I reached out to a mentor and she said 2 things to me. She said, I don't think you know who you are or whose you are. And do you have a relationship with Jesus? Now, I know we're not here really to talk about that, but that was the pivotal moment in October 2014. I gave my life to Christ. And what he did over the coming years was begin to peel away these layers of pride and self-reliance and idolatry. I was idolizing the money I was making. I was idolizing being on the stage. I was idolizing the title and all the things, right? And so as he was doing that, 2 things happened. Number one is he brought that consulting gig into my life in 2016. And then in 2018, he said, I need you to step back from this multi-level marketing opportunity. I need you to focus on the consulting and I'm going to pivot you to start coaching. I summarize it like this. Ambitious woman gets lost on her way to the top, finds Jesus. He says, why don't you let me drive and you hold this map, which is the Bible. Well, in 2018, he said, now I want you to go share this with my ambitious daughters. So 2018 is really when I started Erin Harrigan coaching. So I was still doing the consulting. I had built my multi-level marketing business to a place where it was providing a little bit of residual income. And I started coaching. I started coaching ambitious women in business. These were women, they perhaps they had transitioned from corporate, but mainly they were building their own business. And they knew what to do with their faith. They knew what to do in business, but they didn't know how to connect the two and let God lead. So that's what he led me to do, was coach. So with that coaching came, oh, I need you to go share this message, start a podcast. Oh, now I want you to write this book. So 2018 started the coaching, really setting up the business. 2019 started my podcast. 2020 published my book. 2021 rebranded everything.
Mm.
And so now that's what I've been doing. So I coach Christian women in business who have the outward success in their business. They're not working for someone, but they have a business, whether it's business to business or business to consumer. And I'm really helping them understand it's okay to be ambitious and you don't have to do business the way the world says you have to.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I do now. Like I said, I'm still doing a little bit of the consulting here and there. And really, my business is about helping these women with mindset and then applying that with strategy, accountability, focus, and encouragement.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So, and you mentioned, there's some that are doing side hustles. Some people are going full time, right? And so if you're listening, you're in your career, and you're thinking it's time to make a pivot, know that you've got lots of options, right? You can say, I'm going to stay as a career woman, but I am going to make a pivot into a different position that uses and develops skill sets in a way that I can align that with my side hustle, with the coaching business, with this, with that, right? And eventually kind of do your own thing. And sometimes it's those stepping stone positions that are a win-win, right? A company needs what you have to offer at the moment. You go in and do that work, but you also get the skill sets. So you've got this wonderful career helping women to create fulfilling work, whether they want to kind of do half and half, right? Work half with you, half with me, right? And build a business, whether it's a side hustle or not. So if there's someone listening out there who says, maybe this is the direction I need to take, what would you tell them? What would you tell them if they're considering?
If they're considering starting their own business?
Mm-hmm.
Number one, do an inventory, right? Understand what are those skills, those talents, those gifts that you have. Number two, think about, and you can even survey people that you know, right? What is the one thing that you're really good at solving? What is the one challenge or problem that you're really good at solving?
Mm-hmm.
And normally it's something that everyone comes to you with, right? Or everyone says, oh, you would be so good at this, or you're always so good, right? And start to capture some of that, and then begin to look around and it doesn't even have to be in the industry that you're in, right? Begin to look around and do some Google searches, right? Put in some of those keywords for whatever that problem is that you are looking to solve, and really get a sense of what could it look like to start a business doing X. Mm-hmm. I want to pull out something that you said a minute ago, which is don't overlook those opportunities, especially if you get to a place where you've made that decision, you've done that inventory. Mm-hmm. Don't overlook what seems to be smaller opportunities to gain more skills or more experience.
Yes.
Don't overlook the opportunity to take on a project or two, or work with a client or two, sort of beta test, if you will, what you're going to be rolling out. Maybe you offer it to them at, a much lower price than you would go to market with, whatever that looks like. Mm-hmm. But those three things, inventory what you're good at, inventory the problems that you solve, and then inventory and look around doing the Google search to see, well, what are the questions that people ask about that? You can certainly, from that space, there's really great resources. I mean, Patricia's a fantastic resource. If you're a woman of faith, I'm not going to say fantastic. I'm a good resource. Most states, most regions have access to the Small Business Development Center, which is part of the Small Business Administration. They have free classes. They can give you really great guidance on setting up your business, or setting up your business finances, just all of those kinds of basics.
Yeah.
But I would start there and be prepared. If you haven't already started saving, you could even call it like your pivot fund, right? Start saving to a place where you can cover your expenses for 3 to 6 months, so that you give yourself a little bit of a runway.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That runway is so, so important. I know that's important because And I don't think I know you and I talked right before this call,
Yeah.
awesome conversation, but I don't think I mentioned I'm one of those crazies. I've quit my job multiple times without having something else. And they've all been leaps of faith where
Yeah.
it's like,
There is that.
I just feel like God's like, I'm going to give you this position, but I need you to step out in faith. And it's like, no, no, no. Okay, I'll jump, and every time he meets me there.
Yeah.
And so one of the things, as you were talking, it was just that the idea of like looking at your life sort of full circle, right? And seeing, what do I need right now? What transition time is coming up? And like, what is, if you are someone of faith, like, what is God trying to do in my life right now?
Yeah.
Because sometimes I'll tell you my story. I don't want to jump. And like, it's wise not to jump. And God's like, but we're not on the wise module of your life right now. We are on
I love that.
You know what I mean? We are on the trusting module of your life. And so, I love how you were sharing, that having that relationship helps you to kind of decide.
Yeah.
And have that be a part of your decision-making process. So know that it's partially the logistics and the transition and the mental side of it. And then, like you said, there's also that piece that's a little bit more intuitive, a little bit more prayerful and that kind of thing. I know that you help women in this, as they're starting their business, you help them to kind of get back to a place of fulfillment. So tell us a little bit about your business. How can women find you?
Sure.
How can they get introduced to you, et cetera?
Sure. Well, let me start with, you can find me at erinharrigan.com. If you want to explore working with me, just go to the website, check that out. If you want to get to know me a little bit better, then listen to my Redefining Hustle podcast. It's all about how do we redefine hustle and emulate Jesus as we work as Christian women. So that's how they can get in touch with me. I really mainly focus on working with women who are already in their business. However, I do have women who do transition out of corporate leadership or, even the C-suite or the director level, who are then looking to take their business. Like, I want it to be my business. And what I really help them do is connect that faith and business from a mindset perspective and then implement it, right? Because it's great that we can think about it, but faith without works is dead. I'm not telling you to work all day long, but I am telling you that like the Holy Spirit is not expecting that he's going to do all the work. But when he calls you to it, then I help them sort of map out, okay, this is my vision and my goals. Now, how do I make that happen? And what does my work rhythm look like? Because most of the time when people are transitioning out of the corporate environment, they want their time to be their own, but they also don't want to be going on the hamster wheel that they were on.
Yeah.
But often when we make that transition, this is so true for me. Like they're so used to working that much that they keep working that much. And it's not logical that if they slowed down, their business would actually grow. And that's where God comes in for me. So that's what I really help women do. And if you're in that space, right, like reach out to Patricia, reach out to me. Let's have a conversation about it. Because there is not just one path anymore. And I'll leave you with this. When my mom was 50, I remember I was 30, no, I was like 27. And I said, I just want to know what I'm supposed to be when I grow up. And she said, I'm 50 and I don't know what I'm going to be when I grow up. So whatever age you are, don't think that you have to have it all figured out. I'm 55. And today I was like, what could I do next, Lord? Don't be afraid to allow that time to figure that out. And don't think you have to have it all done today, because you do not.
Yeah. It takes a lifetime.
Yeah.
It takes a lifetime.
Yeah.
I love it. I love everything that you shared today. I'm going to ask you one more question.
Yes.
You've got a download. It's called 4 Keys.
Yes.
Can you explain that to us?
For sure. So a couple of years ago, the Lord gave me a framework for doing business his way. And it's called the 4 Keys to Redefine Hustle. And so I have a tool that listeners can download. It's erinharrigan.com/4keys. I know Patricia will put it in the show notes. Mm-hmm. And it's to keep handy and in front of you the 4 keys to redefining hustle, which is applicable whether you're working in corporate or you have your own business or whatever. And those 4 keys are define, allow the Lord to define you, to define what success means for you, to define what he wants you to be doing. Direct, allow the Lord to direct you. Seek him first for direction, not your own understanding. Discipline, take what you learn from that. Take what you know God has defined and directed and put it into action. Put it into discipline. Create your daily discipline around walking out what he's given you to do, whether that, again, is at work or in your own business. And then the 4th key is develop. If you think of a closed loop system in business, right? The information comes in, you make a plan, you act upon it, you create or you collect the iterative learnings, you put them back in so that you get better every time, right? That's what this is. So develop is where those iterative learnings come in and you grow and you learn, and there are things that you release and there are things you hold on to. And that's where the development takes place so that it can go back into the circle as you grow. And you can say, okay, Lord, now how are you defining the work I'm supposed to do? Now, what would you direct me to do? Okay, now I put it into action. So this loop continues. It's never ending. And it also includes some scriptural references for those, who follow Jesus. But that 4 keys has, even for me, he gave it to me. I've had it for 2 years. I share it everywhere. And daily, I'm like, okay, what key am I on today? Right. So I hope that 4 keys to redefine hustle really helps.
I love that. And yes, it is going to be linked in the description. That's erinharrigan.com/4keys. Well, Erin, it was awesome talking with you today. I know that, we're collaborating both ways. And so I'll also include the link to my episode on your podcast, and we'll just get, more people introduced to you and vice versa. And we'll just continue having these great conversations.
That sounds great. Thank you so much for having me. I pray that these words will help those of you out there that are, maybe you're in that transition, no pun intended, of an uncommon career path, because every path is unique.
Absolutely. It's me again. Thank you for listening. You're now done with the very first step in becoming a part of the Uncommon Career community, and that was to listen to this podcast. So, woohoo! Congratulations, you are done. Your next step is to head over to theuncommoncareer.com or to click on the link in the description to get your career resources that are going to help you make career progress right now. So again, before you forget, head over to theuncommoncareer.com or just click the link in the description, grab your resources, and I'll see you there.